Hello Class 4C1, Teacher Jesse here again with another video. Today's video is going to be on Unit 3 Vocabulary. So let's get started. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay. These first words are going to be a group of words about geography. Okay? So pay attention. We're going to do the same thing that we've done before with our vocabulary reviews. You're going to see a picture of the word. You will get a definition. You will see that word used in an example sentence. And finally, we will do some practice exercises just to make sure we understand all of our words and their definitions. Let's get going. All right. Our first word is mountains. In the picture here, we have one mountain. So, mountains are large landforms that rise above the land around them and usually come to a point or a peak at the top. So you see right here, this mountain, it doesn't come exactly to a peak or a point at the top, but it's pretty pointy, okay? So, in a sentence, we have the example, the mountains were covered with snow. And you can see this mountain right here in the picture is also covered with snow. Because mountains are so high up, it's much colder at that height than it is down where most people live. So oftentimes, year-round at the top of a mountain, there will be snow. Let's move on. Our next word is beach. Okay, you can see a picture here of a beach. A beach is where a body of water, you see the ocean, meets land. So where they meet is called the beach. Beaches are made up of sand and rocks, okay? Here's an example sentence. Vietnam has many beautiful beaches, okay? Vietnam has lots of coastline. There is lots of place where the sea meets the land, and so there is lots and lots of beach along the coast of Vietnam, and many beautiful beaches that you can visit. Okay, so our next word is going to be rainforest. So, a forest is a piece of land that has many trees. Okay, we all know what a forest is. We've all seen a forest. We've all been to a forest. A rainforest is a special kind of forest. A rainforest is a forest that gets lots of rain, okay? It gets much more rain than a normal forest. And that's why it is called a rainforest. A rainforest has to get a certain amount of rain every year in order for it to be considered a rainforest, okay? A word that is commonly used instead of rainforest is jungle. You might know this word. Jungle is a little bit different than a rainforest, but they're pretty similar. So, to use rainforest in a sentence, here is an example. Many beautiful and interesting birds live in the rainforest. And not just birds, many other very interesting and beautiful animals, mammals, insects, birds, reptiles, amphibians. There are so many interesting, beautiful, and sometimes dangerous animals that live in the rainforest. Let's continue. Okay, the desert. Here we have a picture of the desert. A desert is a dry area that has few plants and is usually covered with sand. It's a dry area, so this means that it gets very, very little rain. Unlike the rainforest, which would be almost the opposite of a desert must only get a certain amount of rain each year. If it gets more rain than that, it will not be a desert anymore because plants will start to grow, okay? And it won't look like it does. It won't look like a desert. Let's look at our next word. Before we do that, let's see an example sentence. The desert night was cold and dark. All right, now let's see our next word. Our next word is the North Pole. Okay? So, the North Pole is at the top of the planet, or what we think to be the top of the planet. So, we live in what's called the Northern Hemisphere. The Northern Hemisphere is the top half of the planet Earth. And because we live in the Northern Hemisphere, it seems like the North Pole is above us. Okay? Let's see North Pole used in a sentence. Santa Claus lives in the North Pole. Everyone knows that. Alright? So we have the North Pole, then we have the South Pole. The South Pole, for us, because we are in the Northern Hemisphere, the South Pole seems like it is at the bottom of the planet. Okay? But I want you to pay attention to something. If you live in the Southern Hemisphere, everything is upside down. So when you're in the Southern Hemisphere, for example, if you live in Australia, it would seem like the South Pole is above you and that the North Pole is below you. But for us, it isn't that way. Since we are in the Northern Hemisphere, the North Pole is above us and the South Pole is below us. Let's see South Pole used in a sentence. The South Pole is located in Antarctica. Antarctica is the continent at the very bottom of the planet, and the South Pole is located inside the continent of Antarctica. Okay? Let's move on to our next word. Coral reef. Here you see a picture of a beautiful coral reef with lots of coral. That's what these organisms are called. Coral is kind of like a mix between a plant and an animal. Okay? It seems like a plant, but it also has characteristics that make it seem like an animal. And coral always exists underwater. Coral always exists under the ocean. So, a coral reef is an underwater ecosystem made up of coral and fish and other animals that all live in that ecosystem together. So here's an example sentence. The coral reef has many beautiful fish, just like the rainforest has many beautiful and interesting birds and insects, reptiles, mammals. Okay? Erupt. Here we see a picture of something called a volcano. And a volcano does something very dramatic. A volcano often erupts. An eruption or erupt means that burning rocks, smoke, ash, other things like this right here. This is called magma. Magma is melted rock. All of these things are thrown out from the volcano. That's what we mean when we say the volcano erupts. So in a sentence, we can have the example that the volcano erupted and destroyed the city below. So yes, oftentimes there are cities near a volcano, and if the volcano erupts, all of that ash and all of that magma can go to the city and can cause a lot of damage and can even cause death to the people who are living in that city. All right, let's do some practice to see how much we remember. All right, we have some true or false questions to begin here, and I want you to think about the answer, okay? So our first question is about rainforests. A rainforest is a forest that gets less rain than a regular forest. Is this true or false? I want you to say your answer out loud in 3, 2, 1. That's right. The answer is false. Why? Because a rainforest is a forest that gets more rain than a regular forest. All right, let's see our next true or false question. Our next true or false question, the South Pole is at the bottom of the planet. Is that true or false? In 3, 2, 1. That's right. To us, because we are in the Northern Hemisphere, okay, it seems like the South Pole is at the bottom of the planet. Question number 3. A desert is a dry area that has few plants and is usually covered with sand. Is this true or false? In 3, 2, 1. That's right. This is our definition for desert, a dry area that has few plants, usually covered with sand and rocks as well. Okay, so true. All right, let's talk about another group of vocabulary words. This vocabulary is going to be about the planets and about space and the solar system and things in general like that, okay? So our first word is orbit. So you can see many orbits here in our picture. This is the sun in the middle, and around them are the planets of our solar system. And they are doing something called orbiting. So an orbit kind of has 2 definitions. An orbit can be a noun, and orbit can also be a verb. Let's talk about using orbit as a noun. An orbit is the path that something makes when it travels around something else. So the moon has an orbit around the earth has an orbit around the sun. So you can see the orbits right here. These circles are the paths that the planets take. These circles are the orbits. Orbit can also mean to move in a path around something. So the Earth has an orbit, and the Earth also orbits around the sun. So the moon orbits around the Earth orbits around the sun. Understand? All right, let's continue. So, when the Earth orbits around the sun, we can say that another way. We can say that the Earth travels around the sun. Just like this airplane is traveling around the Earth, and just like the moon travels around the Earth in its orbit. To travel around something means to go in a path around something. In an example sentence, Amelia Earhart, who was a very, very famous pilot from many years ago, traveled around the Earth in an airplane. Okay? Astronomer. Here you can see a picture of a man. This man is an astronomer. He is an astronomer because he studies things in outer space. If you love to study the planets, you are an astronomer. Some people do that for their job. They go to school for many, many years, and they study to be an astronomer. We call those people professional astronomers. A professional anything is a person who gets paid to do that. So a professional actor, a professional footballer, a professional musician, all of these people do things that they do as their job. You can also be an amateur astronomer. An amateur is someone who does something for fun. So you can be an astronomer just like a scientist is an astronomer. All you need is a telescope and a love for astronomy. And then you too can be an astronomer. All right. To support life. To support life means that a place is suitable for life to happen. So the planet has all of the water and oxygen needed to support life. Many of the planets in our solar system cannot support life. They are made up of poisonous gases, or they are very, very hot, or the pressure of gravity is so great that you would not be able to walk on the planet. It would crush you into a little ball because the gravity on that planet, just like our gravity, is much stronger. Okay? Our gravity is just right to support our life, but on a different planet it might not be. Okay. Rings. Here we see the famous rings of Saturn. A ring is a circular object or a group of objects. You can wear a ring around your finger, okay? You can hold hands with your friends and make a ring. Or we can have rings that go around a planet. So the rings of Saturn are very famous. All right, now we have some questions where you have to fill in the blank. I want you to think about the answers to these 3 questions now, and if you need to take some time, go ahead and pause the video. Once you've figured out the answers, go ahead and hit play again so we can check and see if we have all of the same answers. All right, are you ready? Okay, let's go. Number 1, someone who studies things in outer space is called an blank. Galileo Galilei was the first. All right, so who is someone who studies things in outer space? Well, an astronomer is someone who studies things in outer space. And Galileo was the first person to figure out that the Earth goes around the sun. Before that, everyone thought that planet Earth was the center of the universe and everything else went around the Earth. But Galileo figured out that no, that's not correct. The Earth and all of the planets actually orbit around the sun. And you might not believe it, but he got in a lot of trouble for believing this because it went against what everyone thought, okay? So they felt very threatened and very scared by his new idea. And he got in a lot of trouble for just figuring out that the Earth goes around the sun and not the other way around. Let's look at our next question. Blank is a circular object or group of objects. Well, that's easy, right? A ring is a circular object or group of objects. And finally, number 3, the planet has all the water and oxygen needed blank. Well, remember we just talked about this one. A planet needs water, oxygen, the correct temperature, the correct gravity, and many other factors in order for that planet to support life. All right. Those are all the questions we have for this part of our Unit 3 vocabulary. Tune in next time for the rest of our Unit 3 vocabulary. All right, thanks for watching. Goodbye.